Chapter 8, Defending the Faith. One Sunday morning, June 6, 1868, we all went to attend the Danish Lutheran church service. When we were on our way back, we were discussing the priest's sermon, which consisted of the very severe chastisement of some children of the devil, the so-called Mormons, and their Book of Mormon, which was full of lies. One of my friends, Ludwig Thomson, asked me what I thought of the priest's preaching. I answered, the priest is a liar, and the truth is not in him. Thomson was somewhat surprised and answered, how dare you speak thus of one of God's servants? I said, but he is not a servant of God, for he has violated both the commandments and the law, which I will prove to you. He is a liar when he says the Book of Mormon is the work of the devil and is man-made. In this he transgresses the commandment which says, thou shalt not lie. And Jesus said, whosoever transgresseth one of these commandments is guilty of them all. Now the first commandment says, thou shalt have no other gods before me. The priest said that God is a person without body, parts, and passions. The priest here makes the contents of the Bible a lie. Now, if we can rely upon the truthfulness of this great book, which both you and I believe in, then the priest must be a liar. For does not the Bible tell us that God created man in his own image and after his likeness? Moreover, Jesus, the Son of God, and our brother says, when you see me, you see also the Father. For the Father and I are one. And you also remember of reading in the Old Testament where God and two angels came to the tent of Abraham, and how he fed and sheltered them and conversed one with another. Now, if you and I are in the exact image of God, and he talks, eats, and walks, as the Bible says he does, then how are you or I to understand the priest when he says that God has no body or parts? Someone must be a liar, and my friend, it is not the Bible. I continued. The priest said, do not give the Mormons shelter when they come to you. Do not the scriptures say, be charitable and give shelter to those who have no roof to cover them, for you may be entertaining angels and know it not? And does not Jesus say, that which ye do to one of the least of mine, that ye have also done to me? Again, who that says he loves God and hates his brother is a liar. Now the priest hates his brother, for he hates the Mormons, who are all created of the same God, therefore all are his children, if we will do his will and keep his commandments. Those who do not this are of the devil. Now therefore, if the priest teaches a doctrine that is not in accordance with Christ's teachings, then I say he must be a priest of the devil, and the truth is not in him. Just speak freely to me, my friend, for what I have said is all from the Bible, and you know it is true. But what about this Book of Mormon that the priest says is the work of the devil? Asked Ludwig. I replied, I will give you a copy of the Book of Mormon, and when you have read it, you will say that the priest lied about the book. For a book that bears such a strong testimony of Jesus Christ and his plan of salvation and mercy toward men, and condemns with very strong words the workings of the devil is in nearly every chapter of the book, is not the work of the devil. It would be inconsistent and unreasonable for anyone, not even Satan, to tear down the foundation of the very house they live in, or undermine their kingdom, for it would surely fall. You can well know that the devil is not handing out a book that is opposed to his own kingdom and praising Christ, his most bitter enemy. The book, all the way through its pages, admonishes the reader to believe in Christ and keep his commandments. It persuades them to do good and to shun evil. It says all good comes from God and evil comes from the devil. The devil surely would not write a book that would give himself no praise or honor, but invite all men everywhere to worship God and him only, and to hate the devil. Ludwig Thomson accepted the book and also promised to read it. And of course, everyone on the crew, which while we were there in England, learned that I was a Mormon priest on account of the antagonistic stand that I had taken against the priest, for I was truly filled with the spirit of testimony in accordance with the promises given to me when I was ordained to the priesthood. I dared not do otherwise, or I myself would be a violator of the commandments, as I have already said of the priest. Thomson read the book not to himself, but aloud to all the crew. And I often heard him say with emphasis while reading, "This is not the work of the devil, neither is it of man." When he finished with the book, he returned it to me, saying, "Steersman, you are right. This cannot be the work of the devil or of man, for there is nothing in it that I can see but what substantiates the teaching of Christ and his apostles as is recorded in the Bible. I only wish I were as good a man as you are." I took advantage of every opportunity after this to expound the faith I had accepted to my fellow workers in the crew. I supplied them with the Doctrine and Covenants and official publications of the Scandinavian mission that I carried along with me. A few days later, the Madame came to me and said, "Steersman, I need your assistance again, for I have invited His Highness, the priest, to midday lunch, and I want you to help me arrange a nice meal for him. And what do you think would be the most suitable?" "Well, Madame, we have young chickens and asparagus, and you will see one of the most suitable meals you have ever seen for a long time, for it is one time where one priest will cook one meal for another," I said. The next day was Sunday, and also Pentecostal Day, which the Lutherans celebrate with a great deal of splendor, and the day that the priest was to dine with us. I was surely busy, but had everything ready promptly at 12 o'clock noon, and had put on my Sunday clothes and had the table all set. The captain and his wife were all groomed and sitting in the pretty cabin with a sanctimonious countenance on their faces. It was indeed a church holiday as well as a visit from a church dignitary. I was standing upon the half deck, ready to receive my fellow priest, in name only, mind you. I am called of God and he of the devil. And at 12 o'clock noon, he came up the gangplank and I reached him a helping hand, and then led him to the captain's cabin, where he was received with all politeness and respect due to such a dignitary. I soon had the food on the table, and the priest, the captain, and his wife, the first steersman, and myself were all seated at the table and eating this nice meal. At the table, the conversation led to the topic of the day, namely Mormonism, and the Madame asked the priest what he thought of the new sect. "Ah," said the priest, "that is one thing one should never let enter his head." "But," said the Madame, "you talked very loudly and boldly last Sunday about them in your church." "Oh, yes, It came in handy for the text I was to preach on. The madame pressed forward further and said, "Now, are you sure you told the truth?" "No, that I am not, as I have not enough evidence to verify the charge." "You remember," said the madame, "that you said they had a book they called the Book of Mormon. You said it was the work of the devil or a man-made story. It seems to me that it has already been demonstrated here today that your utterance in this regard was a falsehood." "Well, yes," he said, "but there is no danger that one will be taken to task for my talk. Now let me tell you, madame, how the Mormons were driven out of Iceland, thanks to a good priest who told his congregation that if they wanted to go to hell, do as the Mormon priest told them to do, but if they wanted to go to heaven, then drive the Mormons out of the land. They drove them out and have been rid of the pest ever since." "But," said the madame insisted, "all this does not disprove the Mormons are teaching falsehood and their book is of the devil." I did not hear any more of the conversation, for I was called out to receive a gentleman who wished to talk to the captain. I am sure the madame did not let her friend, the priest, get any the better of the argument, or to say too many untruths about my religion, for she had a great deal of respect for me. After this episode with the priest, everything moved quietly along on board ship, and we soon had our cargo off, as well as another on again, which consisted of coal destined for the Suez Canal. The canal at this time was under construction by Great Britain and was therefore a much talked of thing at this time. We were soon on our way again, riding upon the waves of the deep sea. The trip before us was a long one, as we all knew well. I had very many pleasant moments with my comrades on the way in talking and explaining the beliefs of Mormonism. It seemed that the visit to the church in Hull was all prearranged for my sake by divine providence, for after that I seemed to be kindled with more of the testimony of the gospel and plan of salvation than I had ever been before. I indeed had this uppermost in my mind. At times the captain's wife and I would get in discussions about my newly adopted religion. We would become very heated at times and sometimes say things that we had to apologize to each other for after we had calmed down and became ourselves again. The madame always had a great deal of respect for me and always praised me for the stand I took in defending that which I believed. For surely I was not ashamed of the gospel of Christ, for I did know it was the power unto salvation, and I was becoming filled more and more with the spirit of testimony and wanted the whole world to know of the glad tidings and to be even as a disciple of the living Christ. The trip went very smoothly except for a few storms I caused on board in discussing my religion with the workers on board. After a storm comes calm, and after calm comes storm. Thus I have noticed, both in regards to weather and also in one's life. We were sailing along very smoothly just off the coast of Egypt. The ship was going forward toward our destination with full sail, and everybody was happy. The captain was walking serenely along the deck, which he always did whenever things were going along all right. He had his high-top silk hat on and was smoking one of his fine Cuban cigars when the storm struck us. I was walking along the side of him, and the first I knew, his hat blew off and hit me in the face and then off into the ocean. That was the first alarm we had of the oncoming cyclone. The whole sea around about looked as though we were a sea of fire. It was blinding and deafening, but only lasted for 1/2 hour, almost before we could get the men on board to do anything. It is hard for anyone except a seaman to fully comprehend the intensity of such a catastrophe. The wind seems to get right down under the water and lift the whole ocean upward with a terrific force and then dumps it all right upon you or upon the ship. It is at a time like this that one must be at his wits. Think and work quickly or all is lost. And it will soon show you whether a man knows his business or position on ship, especially a sail ship. The Suez Canal, which was being dug when I was there, connected the Mediterranean and the Red Seas. Its length is 57 sea miles. The average time to go through the canal is now 15 to 18 hours. Its average dimensions are width 150 to 300 feet at water level and 72 feet at the bottom. Here in Suez are a great many different kinds of people, all congregated on account of the building of the canal. One had to be extremely careful and not get out among them, for they would kill and plunder you for a mere trifling. These robbers were mostly Arabs, so when one went inland, you had to see to it that you were well armed and not stay out very late in the evening, or you would probably miss out on breakfast. Nothing out of the ordinary happened to any member of our crew or our ship, but we heard many stories of men who had been plundered and murdered by Arabian robbers every day or so. It made us more cautious than ever. We could not get any cargo here after we had unloaded, so we sailed for Alexandria, Egypt, which is just a short distance from where we were, and there tried to get a cargo for our ship. Alexandria is an excellent harbor and is one of the most famous cities of antiquity. The city was founded 332 BC by command of Alexander the Great. It is about 14 miles west of the space. In part of the town, they have cisterns built under the houses. These cisterns were dug and filled with water, which could contain enough water to last the population for 1 year in case of siege. The city rose to be a mighty trading center and grew very fast until at one time it had a population of 750,000 people. But wars and diversions of trade dwindled the inhabitants to about 6,000 at the end of the 18th century. Here we see many of the ruins that flourished in Joseph's times, bracket, Joseph that was sold into Egypt, end bracket. Also here are the Cleopatra's needles. These needles are 92 feet high and 27.5 feet around them, and are of solid red syenite granite and very highly polished. The shaft is round but stands on a four-cornered base made of granite. These two obelisks were brought from Heliopolis in 14 BC by one Ramses II and erected here in this city. After I was there, one of the needles was given to England and one to America by Ismail Pasha. Ours was brought over on a specially built ship in 1880. It now stands in Central Park, New York City.